The sky above the ruined colony was a pale shade of gray. Tall buildings that once touched the clouds were now broken shells. The ground was covered with pieces of stone, metal, and old signs that no longer had meaning. Silence filled the streets. Only the sound of the wind moved between the empty structures. Ben walked slowly along the cracked road. His boots made a soft crunch on the dusty ground. He was tired, but he kept going. His uniform was worn from weeks of work, and his face showed the marks of long days without rest. He was a soldier, but this place no longer had battles. It was only a city of memories now. He stopped for a moment near an old fountain that was dry. The statue in the center had no head, and the water channels were broken. He looked around. Everything was still, but he felt something. It was a feeling he could not explain, like eyes watching from the shadows. Then he saw her. Near a fallen wall, a figure sat quietly. At first, he thought it was a child, but as he walked closer, he saw it was not a human at all. It was a woman from the alien race that once lived here. Her clothes were torn and dirty. Her skin was light blue with small patterns that looked like silver lines. Her hair was long and tangled, falling across her face. She sat with her knees pulled to her chest, and her head was low. Ben stopped a few steps away. She did not look at him. Her shoulders moved slightly as if she was breathing slowly, or maybe shaking. He could not tell. He waited for a moment, unsure what to do. She was not a soldier. She had no weapon. She looked thin, like she had not eaten for days. He took off his helmet and spoke gently. "Are you all right?" There was no answer. Only the soft sound of the wind moved between them. He tried again, this time slower. "Do you understand me?" The woman lifted her head a little. Her eyes were large and bright, the color of green glass. They looked tired and afraid. She said something in her own language, a soft string of words that Ben could not understand. Her voice was low, almost like a whisper. Ben raised his hand slightly, showing he meant no harm. Then he reached into his pack and pulled out a small water bottle. He walked closer and placed it on the ground near her. She looked at it, then at him, her eyes full of question. "It is water," he said softly. "You can drink." For a long moment, she did not move. Then slowly, very slowly, she reached for the bottle. Her fingers were long and thin, with small silver marks like her skin. She opened the cap and took a small sip. Her throat moved as she swallowed. And then she closed her eyes for a second. It was as if that single sip gave her strength. Ben watched her carefully. She did not look dangerous. She only looked lost. He wondered how long she had been here. He knew the city had been empty since the war ended, but some people, maybe like her, had no place to go. "What is your name?" he asked gently. She looked at him again. Her lips moved slowly as she spoke a single word. "Nira," she said. Her voice soft and broken, but clear enough for him to understand. Ben nodded. "My name is Ben," he said, pointing at himself. "Ben," she repeated it, her voice almost unsure. "Ben," he gave a small smile. It was the first time he had smiled in days. There was something about her that made him feel different. Not like a soldier, but like a person meeting another person. Nira looked around the street as if she expected someone else to come, but there was no one. The city was silent, only broken buildings and empty windows. Her hands held the water bottle, close, like it was the most important thing she had. Ben reached into his pack again and took out a small food bar. He opened it and held it out to her. She looked at it with doubt, then slowly reached and took it. She smelled it first, then took a small bite. For a moment, her eyes closed again, as if the taste was something she had not felt for a long time. He sat down on a piece of stone near her, keeping some space so she would not feel afraid. They stayed like that for a while. She ate slowly, and he watched the clouds move above the broken city. "You are alone?" he asked after some time. She looked at him, then lowered her eyes. She nodded once, very slowly. Ben felt a weight in his chest. He did not know her story yet, but he could guess. Many like her had lost their homes when the war came. Many had no family left. He wondered how many were still out there, Hiding among ruins, he wanted to ask more, but he could see. She was tired. He decided not to push. Instead, he looked around and checked the area, making sure it was safe. Then he sat back again. The sky began to change color. The gray clouds opened a little, letting soft light fall on the city. It touched the broken walls, the dry fountain, and the two figures sitting in silence. For a moment, the place did not look so empty. Ben looked at Nira again. Her eyes were still on the ground, but her hands no longer shook as much. She held the food bar like a small treasure. He thought to himself, this is not just a mission anymore. This is something else, and for the first time in many days, he felt that maybe, even in a broken world, there was still a reason to stay human. The sun was setting behind the broken towers. The soft orange light touched the edges of the buildings and made long shadows on the ground. The city felt less cold now, but it was still empty and quiet. Ben sat on the same stone, his helmet resting. Beside him, he looked at Nira, who was still sitting near the fallen wall. She held the water bottle close, as if afraid someone would take it away. Ben spoke gently. "Do you need more food?" Nira looked up, her green eyes shining softly in the fading light. She shook her head slowly, holding what was left of the food bar in her hand. She had eaten only half of it, saving the rest for later. Ben understood that kind of thinking. When you are not sure about tomorrow, you keep something for the next day. He watched her for a moment, then looked around the street. Broken signs lay on the ground, written in her language, which he could not read. The buildings were empty shells, with dark windows like silent eyes. It was hard to imagine that this place was once full of life. He wondered what it looked like before the war. Maybe children played in the streets. Maybe people walked to markets. Maybe there was laughter. Now there was only dust and silence. Ben wanted to know more about her, but he did not want to make her afraid. He thought of the best way to ask. He pointed at her, then spread his arms wide, as if asking about others. "Family?" he said softly. Nira looked down. Her fingers touched the edge of the broken wall. For a moment she said nothing. Then she spoke in a quiet voice. "Gone," she said in broken human language. Her voice was heavy, like the word itself was too hard to carry. Ben felt something in his chest tighten. He understood enough. She had no one left. He nodded slowly and said, "I'm sorry." She looked at him, as if trying to read his face. Maybe she did not understand the words, but she felt the meaning. Her eyes softened for a moment before she turned away again. Ben knew he could not leave her here. The night would be cold, and there were dangers in the ruins. Not soldiers or guns anymore, but hunger, sickness, and the kind of loneliness that breaks a person. He looked at the small bag of supplies he had. It was enough for him, but not for two people for long. Still, he could not just walk away. He spoke again, slowly, using simple words. "Come with me. Safe place, food, water." She looked at him with surprise. Her head tilted slightly, and her long hair fell to one side. She did not answer at once. Instead, she looked around the street as if searching for something. Then her eyes returned to him. "Why?" she asked in a soft voice. The word was clear. Ben thought about the question. Why was he doing this? He could have stayed out of this. He could have finished his patrol and gone back to the outpost alone. But something inside him did not let him walk away. He did not want to see another life fade in the ruins. He pointed at himself and said, "Soldier, protect, help." She stared at him for a long moment, then looked at the ground again. Her fingers pressed against the empty wall as if it was the last piece of her old world. Ben waited. He did not want to push her. After a while, she whispered something in her own language, words he did not know. Then she stood up slowly. Her movements were weak, but there was a small light in her eyes now. Ben picked up his helmet and put it on. He held out his hand, not too close, but enough to show he wanted her to come. She looked at his hand for a moment, then at his face. Finally, she nodded and took a small step toward him. She did not take his hand, but she walked beside him. That was enough. As they moved through the empty streets, Ben stayed alert. The sky was darker now, with only a thin line of light on the horizon. The wind blew softly, carrying the sound of loose metal and old signs. Nira walked quietly, holding the water bottle and the half-eaten food bar. Her steps were slow, but steady. Ben spoke sometimes, saying simple things like safe soon or almost there. He did not know if she understood every word, but she seemed to understand his tone. Once, when he looked at her, he saw her watching him with curious eyes. Not fear anymore, but something else, maybe trust or the beginning of it. They passed an old market. The roof was broken, and the stalls were empty. A torn flag hung from a pole, moving in the wind. Ben wondered if Nira had ever come here when it was full of life. Maybe she bought food here. Maybe she talked with friends. Now it was just another ghost of the past. Finally, they reached a small building that still had walls strong enough to keep the cold away. It was not much, but Ben had used it before as a rest spot during patrol. Inside, there were the broken chairs, an old table, and some blankets he had left behind. He opened the door and let her go in first. She stepped inside slowly, looking around like she was entering another world. Ben set his pack on the table and gave her one of the blankets. She touched it carefully, then wrapped it around herself. For a moment, she closed her eyes and took a deep breath, as if feeling safe for the first time in a long while. He sat on the floor near the table and took out another small ration pack. He showed her how to open it, and she copied his actions. They ate in silence, only the soft sound of chewing breaking the quiet. After a while, Ben spoke again, his voice calm. "Tomorrow, we go to base. You will be safe there." She looked at him with wide eyes. "Safe?" she asked. "Yes," he said with a nod. "Safe?" She seemed to think about it for a moment, then gave a small nod of her own. The night outside grew darker, but inside the small room, there was a quiet peace. Two lives from different worlds, sitting together, sharing food and silence, for the first time since the war ended. Ben felt that maybe something good could still grow in the middle of all this ruin, and Nira, wrapped in a warm blanket, felt something she had not felt in a long time: hope. The morning light entered the broken windows of the small building. Soft rays touched the dusty floor, making tiny golden spots on the ground. Ben opened his eyes slowly. For a moment, he forgot where he was. Then he saw the cracked walls and the old table, and it all came back to him. He sat up and looked around. Nira was sitting near the doorway. She had the blanket wrapped around her shoulders, and she was looking outside. Her face was calm, but her eyes seemed far away, like they were looking at something that was not there anymore. Ben noticed that she had not touched the second ration pack he left near her. She was just holding the water bottle in her hands. He stood and walked to her slowly. "Good morning," he said softly. She turned her head and looked at him. For a moment, she did not speak. Then she gave a small nod. "Morning," she said in her quiet voice. Her words were broken, but they were clear enough. Ben smiled a little and sat near her. Outside, the city was still silent. A soft wind moved the dust in the streets. In the distance, he could hear the sound of something metal falling, but it was far away. "You should eat," Ben said, pointing at the ration pack. She looked at it, then at him. Slowly, she picked it up and opened it the way he had shown her last night. She took a small bite and chewed carefully. Ben noticed how slow she ate, like she wanted to make it last for as long as possible. For a while, they ate in silence. Then Ben spoke again, using simple words. "You lived here?" he asked, pointing toward the city. Nira stopped chewing. Her eyes moved to the street outside. She looked at the broken buildings for a long time. Then she gave a small nod. "Yes," she said. Ben waited, hoping she would say more. After a moment, she spoke again, her words soft and slow. "Home there," she said, pointing to the west, where the tallest broken tower stood. "Big house." "Family." Her voice changed when she said the last word. It was softer, almost like a whisper. Her fingers held the blanket tight around her. Ben asked gently, "What happened?" Nira lowered her head. Her hair fell forward, hiding part of her face. For a moment, she said nothing. Then she took a deep breath and started to speak. Her words came slowly, and some were in her own language, but Ben understood the meaning. She told him about her family, her parents, her brother, and her little sister. She told him about the days before everything changed, when the streets were full of life. She spoke about the markets with bright colors, the music in the squares, and the lights that shone in the night. Her voice was soft, but there was a sadness in every word. Then her voice grew even softer when she spoke about the war. She said that one day, the sky became dark with ships, the sounds of engines filled the air, and then there was fire. She said people ran everywhere, trying to hide. Her family tried to escape, but the roads were full. She lost them in the chaos. She searched for days, but they were gone. Ben listened without saying a word. He could see the pain in her eyes as she spoke. Her hands trembled slightly as she held the blanket. When she finished, she looked down at the floor. A tear slid down her cheek, but she did not wipe it away. Ben felt something deep inside. He had seen cities fall before. He had seen people lose everything. But hearing her story like this was different. It was not just a report or a number. It was real. It was sitting right in front of him. "I am sorry," he said softly. The words felt small compared to her pain, but they were all he had. She looked at him for a moment, her eyes red from the tears. Then she gave a small nod, like she understood. Ben thought about his own past, about the faces he could not forget, about the nights when he sat alone, thinking about friends who never came back. He knew what loss felt like. Maybe not the same as hers, but close enough to understand. He wanted to say something to make her feel better, but there were no easy words. So he just stayed there, sitting beside her, sharing the silence. Sometimes silence speaks more than words. After some time, Nira spoke again. Her voice was so soft that he almost did not hear it. "Why help me?" she asked. Ben turned to her. Her eyes were looking straight at him now. They were not afraid anymore. They were full of questions. He thought for a moment, then said, "Because you need help. And because I can." She looked at him, as if trying to understand. Then she gave a small nod. Ben stood and picked up his pack. "We leave soon," he said. "Base is not far. You will be safe there." Nira looked outside again. Her fingers touched the doorway as if she was saying goodbye to the city. Then she stood slowly, wrapping the blanket around her shoulders. She followed him out of the building. As they walked through the empty streets, Ben noticed how she looked at everything. The broken walls, the shattered glass, the faded colors of old signs. Every corner held a memory for her, and now those memories were like shadows. They passed a small park. The trees were dry and without leaves. Nira stopped for a moment and looked at a broken bench. She whispered something in her own language, her voice full of sorrow. Ben waited until she was ready to move again. When they reached the edge of the park, Ben saw something on the ground, a small object half buried in the dust. He picked it up and cleaned it with his glove. It was a round piece of metal with strange designs, maybe a toy, maybe a piece of jewelry. He held it out to Nira. She looked at it, and her eyes widened. She took it slowly, holding it with both hands. For a moment, she closed her eyes. Then she whispered one word, "Home." Ben said nothing. He just let her keep it. The sun was high now, and the road ahead was long. But as they walked together, Ben felt something change. The city was still broken. The world was still heavy with pain. But there was a small light now, a fragile connection between two lives, and sometimes that is enough to keep going. The road stretched out in front of them, quiet and empty. The wind moved the dust across the cracked pavement, and the sound of their footsteps was the only thing that broke the silence. Ben walked ahead, scanning the streets for any danger, while Nira followed close behind. She held the metal piece he had given her, gripping it as if it was the last piece of her old life. The day was warm, but the air felt heavy. Broken towers stood like silent watchers, their shadows long under the bright sun. Every time Ben looked back, he saw Nira walking with slow, careful steps, She was tired, but she did not complain. Her eyes were always moving, looking at the ruins around them, remembering the world that was gone. After some time, Ben stopped near a fallen wall and motioned for her to rest. He placed his pack on the ground and sat down on a large stone. Nira sat a little distance away, her blanket still wrapped around her shoulders. She looked at him for a moment, then lowered her gaze. Ben took a small water bottle and drank a little. Then he offered it to her. She accepted and drank slowly, as if trying to make every drop last. When she gave it back, their eyes met for a second. There was no fear in her eyes now, only a quiet sadness. For a while, neither of them spoke. The wind made a soft sound through the broken walls, and a bird flew across the sky. Ben watched it for a moment and then looked back at her. Something inside him told him that she needed to hear more than silence. She needed to know that she was not the only one who had lost something. So he spoke. His voice was calm, but there was a weight in it. I had a family too, he said. Nira looked at him, her eyes curious. Ben continued, choosing simple words so she could understand. My home was far from here, on another world. It was green, big fields, rivers, mountains. My mother was kind. My father strong. I had a little brother. He liked to laugh. His voice softened when he spoke about his brother. The memory felt close. Even after so many years, I joined the army when I was young, he said. I wanted to protect my home. I wanted to make my family proud. Nira listened closely, her head slightly tilted. She did not speak, but her eyes never left his face. Ben took a deep breath and looked at the broken road in front of him. Then, the war came, he said. Big ships in the sky. Just like here. I fought for years. Many friends gone. And then, he stopped for a moment. His hands pressed together, and he felt the old pain rising in his chest. But he did not stop. He wanted her to understand. Then one day, I got a message. My home was gone. My family, gone too. I was far away. I could not help them. I could not even say goodbye. His voice grew quieter with every word. The wind seemed to stop for a moment. Nira sat still, her eyes wide. She understood. She did not know every word, but she felt the truth in his voice. Ben gave a short, sad smile. After that, I had nothing, only the army, only the war. I told myself I would fight so no one else would feel what I felt, but war never ends. There's always another fight. He looked at her then. His eyes were tired, but there was a small light in them. When I saw you yesterday, I could not leave you. I know what it feels like to lose everything. No one should be alone in this. For a long moment, there was silence between them. Nira looked at him, her lips slightly parted. Then her eyes filled with tears. She held the metal piece tighter in her hands and lowered her head. A soft sound escaped her throat, a sound full of pain. Ben did not move at first. He let her cry. The tears fell on the blanket, and her shoulders shook. It was a quiet cry, but it carried years of grief. Ben felt his chest tighten, but he stayed calm. He knew she needed this. After a while, he spoke softly. It is all right, he said. You are not alone now. She lifted her head slowly. Her face was wet, but her eyes were clear. She looked at him for a long time. And then something happened that surprised him. She moved closer, very slowly, and sat beside him. She did not speak, but she leaned her shoulder against his arm, just a little. It was not much, but it meant everything. Ben sat still for a moment, then gave a small nod. He did not put his arm around her. He did not want to frighten her. He just stayed there, letting her know that he was there. The two of them sat together, in silence as the wind moved through the ruins, two souls from different worlds, both carrying heavy losses, both finding a small piece of comfort in each other. When Nira finally spoke, her voice was soft but clear. Thank you, she said. Ben looked at her and gave a small smile. You are welcome, he said. After some time, he stood and picked up his pack. Come, he said. We need to keep moving. Nira wiped her face and stood too. She held the metal piece close to her chest and looked at the road ahead. It was still long, and the world was still broken. But something had changed. For the first time since the war began, Ben felt a little less empty. And for the first time since she lost everything, Nira felt that maybe, just maybe, there was still a reason to keep walking. They started moving again, side by side, their shadows stretching long across the empty street. The journey was not over. It had only just begun. The road ahead was long and broken. The sun had moved higher in the sky, but dark clouds were starting to gather on the horizon. The air felt heavy, and the wind was changing. Ben looked up and frowned. He knew what that meant. A storm was coming. He turned to Nira and spoke. In a calm voice, "We need to move faster," he said. She looked at the clouds and understood. Her steps became quicker even though she was tired. The blanket around her shoulders moved in the wind, and she held it tight. As they walked, the city ruins seemed to grow darker. The tall towers blocked the light, and the empty streets felt even more silent. Broken glass crunched under their boots. Sometimes Ben thought he heard a sound behind them. But when he looked, there was nothing. Still, he did. Not like this place. The storm clouds moved closer, and the wind grew stronger. It carried dust and old paper across the street. Ben stopped near a fallen statue and pointed toward a large building ahead. "We take shelter there," he said. They hurried toward it. The building was tall, but half of it had collapsed. The front doors were broken, but the inside looked safe enough. They stepped inside just as the first drops of rain began to fall. The inside was dark and smelled of old stone. Ben turned on a small light from his belt. The beam cut through the dust and showed broken chairs and long tables. It looked like an old hall where people once gathered. Now it was silent. Only the sound of rain hitting the roof above. Nira moved. Close to him, her eyes looked around carefully, and she held the metal piece in her hand. Ben checked the corners and then set his pack near the wall. "We wait here until the storm ends," he said. She nodded and sat down on the floor. Ben sat across from her, his rifle resting on his knees. The rain outside grew heavier. It hit the roof hard and poured through holes in the ceiling. The sound filled the empty hall like a drum. The wind whistled through the broken windows. It was not just a normal storm. It was strong, and it would last for hours, for a while. They sat in silence, listening to the rain. Then Ben spoke. "You ever see storms like this?" Nira shook her head slowly. "No," she said. "Sky, I'm never angry before." Ben gave a small smile at her words. "On my home world, we had storms like this every year," he said. "But they never scared me. My brother liked to watch them from the window. He said they sounded like music." Nira tilted her head, trying to imagine it, music from the sky. She gave a small smile too, but it faded quickly as another thought came. "This world, broken," she said softly. Ben looked at her and nodded. "Yes," he said, "but not forever. It can heal. People can rebuild." She lowered her eyes. Her fingers moved over the metal piece she held. She wanted to believe his words, but the ruins outside told another story. Suddenly, a sound came from deeper inside the building, a small, sharp sound, like metal scraping against stone. Ben froze. His hand tightened on his rifle. Nira heard it too. Her eyes widened, and she held her blanket close. Ben raised his hand to tell her to stay quiet. He moved slowly, his boots making no sound on the dusty floor. He pointed his light toward the dark corner of the hall. The beam touched a broken door at the far end. The sound came again, a soft scrape followed by a thud. Ben stepped closer, his finger near the trigger. He reached the door and pushed it open with the barrel of his rifle. The room inside was small, filled with broken shelves and old machines. He moved the light across the floor. Then he saw it, a small war drone, half broken but still active. Its single eye glowed red in the dark. It moved slowly, dragging one damaged leg. But its weapon still worked. When the light hit it, the drone turned toward Ben and made a sharp noise. Ben fired before it could attack. The sound of his rifle shook the hall. The shot hit the drone and sent it crashing against the wall. Sparks flew, and then it went still. But the noise was loud, too loud. The sound of the shot echoed through the building and out into the street. Ben knew what that meant. He ran back to Nira quickly. "We need to move now," he said. Nira stood at once, fear in her eyes. "Why?" she asked. Ben listened for a moment. Then he heard the sound of footsteps outside, heavy and fast. Not machines this time. People. Looters thought they came into ruins like this, searching for anything they could steal. Food, water, anything left behind, and they were not friendly. Ben knew he could fight them if he had to, but Nira was with him. That made things harder. "Stay close," he said. He grabbed his pack, slung it over his shoulder, and led her to the back of the hall. There was another door there, half broken but still open. They moved through it into a narrow hallway. The sound of voices came from the front now. Rough voices speaking in a language Nira knew. Her face went pale. Ben put a finger to his lips. Quiet. They moved down the hallway fast but careful. Every shadow felt like danger. The storm outside roared, hiding some of their steps, but the voices were getting closer. Finally, they reached another door that led to the outside. Ben pushed. It opened slowly. The rain hit them hard, cold and heavy. The street was empty, but he knew it would not stay that way for long. "Run," he said. They ran through the rain, their feet splashing in the water. The wind pushed against them, and the broken buildings loomed like giants in the storm. Behind them, the voices shouted, but the storm covered their tracks after a long run. They reached an old tunnel entrance. Ben pulled Nira inside and closed the heavy door. The sound of rain became distant, and the tunnel was dark. He turned on his light and checked her. She was breathing hard, her face wet from rain and fear, but she was safe. Ben let out a slow breath. "We stay here for now," he said. Nira nodded, still holding the metal piece close. She looked at him, her eyes full of trust now. No fear, only trust. The storm outside kept raging, and the danger was still out there. But in the dark of the tunnel, Ben felt a strange peace. They had survived again, and something told him they would keep surviving, together. The storm had passed when Ben and Nira finally left the tunnel. The rain had stopped, and the sky was clear, but the city still looked broken and empty. The wind was soft now, moving leaves and small bits of paper across the streets. The air smelled fresh, and for the first time in a long time, Ben felt hope. "We are close," Ben said. "The base is just beyond those buildings." Nira looked ahead, her eyes wide. She had never seen a human military base before. To her, it looked like a small city made of metal and glass, shining even under the weak sunlight. Tall fences surrounded it, and guards stood watch at every corner dot as they approached. A tall gate opened slowly. 2 soldiers with rifles checked them carefully. Ben showed his identification badge. The guards nodded and let them pass. Inside, the base was busy but organized. People walked quickly, talking into devices or carrying equipment. Ben led Nira through the paths, careful to explain things quietly. "This is where we live and work," he said. "It is safe here." Nira looked around in amazement. There were places with food and water, clean beds, and even small gardens growing fresh plants. She could see children playing in a small yard, their laughter ringing in the air. Ben stopped near a building where medical staff worked. A woman with a warm smile stepped forward. "This is Nurse Hannah," Ben said. "She will help you." Nira nodded shyly. Her hand still held the metal piece tightly. She felt nervous, but also a little safer. Nurse Hannah welcomed Nira gently. She asked simple questions about her health and gave her some clean clothes. Nira changed behind a screen. When she came out, she looked different, not just in clothes, but in spirit. The blanket was gone, replaced by a soft jacket that fit her small frame. Ben smiled. "You look better." Nira smiled back, though her eyes still held the sadness of what she had lost. But now, she felt something new. Kindness. As they walked through the base, people stopped and stared. Nira was different from everyone here. Her skin color, her eyes, even her way of moving were strange to them. Some whispered quietly. while others looked curious but kind. Ben noticed and gave her a quiet warning. Don't be afraid. People will get used to you. Nira nodded. She understood but felt shy. Later, Ben took her to a quiet room. He wanted to explain more about the people here and what they hoped to do. He knew that Nira had questions. So did he? We fight to protect this world, Ben said. The war you saw, it is not over everywhere. But here, we try to build peace. Nira listened carefully. She asked about the soldiers and the leaders. She wanted to know if there was hope for her people, for her home. Ben told her that many humans believed in helping others. They shared stories of peace missions and rebuilding cities destroyed by war. It was not perfect, but it was a start. Nira thought about her family and the streets where she once played. Could this place be a new start for her too? Could she trust these people after everything she had seen? Before Ben could answer, the door opened. A tall man with a calm face entered. He was one of the base leaders. His name was Captain Hale. Captain Hale looked at Nira with interest but did not show surprise. Ben tells me you found her in the ruins, he said. Yes, Captain, Ben replied. She is alone and needs help. The captain nodded slowly. Then he turned to Nira and spoke kindly. You are safe here. Nira felt her heart beat faster. She was a stranger in a strange place, but these words gave her courage. Captain Hale asked Nira about her story. She told him some parts in her simple words, leaving out the worst moments. The captain listened quietly, then said, We will do what we can to help you. That night, Ben stayed in the room with Nira. She sat quietly, looking at the metal piece that reminded her of home. Ben could see how tired she was. Tomorrow, Ben said softly, you will meet more people. They will want to know your story. But remember, you are not alone. Nira looked at him and nodded. Thank you, she whispered. Before sleep, Nira thought about the city outside, the war, and the strange kindness of the humans here. It was a new world for her, full of unknown things, but also hope. She closed her eyes, holding the metal piece close. Maybe this was the beginning of something new. Maybe she could heal here. The morning sun rose softly over the base, casting warm light on the buildings and the people moving about. The air was fresh, carrying the smell of earth and new growth from the small gardens that dotted the camp. Nira woke slowly, feeling different. The tiredness in her body was still there, but her mind felt clearer than it had in a long time. Ben was already awake when she opened her eyes. He sat near the window, looking out over the base. When he saw Nira awake, he smiled and stood to greet her. Good morning, he said gently. Nira returned the smile, a little shy but happy to see him. She held the metal piece in her hand, feeling its weight and the memories it carried. Today was important. It was the day Nira would meet many of the people who lived in the base, people who were curious about her story, and people who could help her find a place in this new world. After a simple breakfast, Ben led Nira through the camp. The sun warmed their faces, and the base seemed alive with hope. Soldiers trained quietly in the distance, while others repaired machines or worked in the gardens. Children played and laughed. The sound was new to Nira's ears and brought a small smile to her lips. As they walked, many stopped to look at Nira. Some whispered among themselves, their eyes filled with questions. Others smiled kindly. Nira felt a mixture of nervousness and hope. She was no longer alone, but she was still very different. Ben stopped near a large building, the main hall of the base. Inside, a group had gathered: soldiers, doctors, engineers, and leaders. Captain Hale stood at the front, waiting for them. Everyone, Ben said quietly to Nira, this is your new home for now. Nira took a deep breath and stepped inside. The room was filled with faces, all watching her. She held the metal piece tightly and spoke in her simple words. I come from a far place, she said. My home was broken by war. I lost my family. I am alone. The room was silent. The people listened with respect and sadness. I want to learn, she continued. I want to help. I want to live. Captain Hale stepped forward and nodded. We are glad you are here, he said. You have strength. You have hope. We will help you find your way. For the first time, Nira felt something she had not known in a long time: acceptance. The walls around her heart seemed to soften. Days passed, and Nira slowly began to learn about life in the base. She studied the human language with help from the teachers. She worked with engineers who showed her how to fix machines. She helped in the gardens, planting seeds and watching them grow. Ben was always there, a steady friend who never asked too much but gave much support. They shared stories and dreams. Nira told him about her home, the stars she once saw, and the songs her mother used to sing. Ben shared memories of his brother and his own hope for peace. One evening, after a long day of learning, Nira and Ben sat by a small fire outside the base. The stars shone brightly above them, clear and full of promise. Do you think we can really find peace? Nira asked softly. Ben looked up at the stars and smiled. Maybe, he said. We have to try. That is what makes us human. Nira nodded. She felt a new strength growing inside her. The pain of the past was still there, but it was no longer all she had. Weeks turned into months. The base grew stronger. New people arrived, some refugees like Nira, some soldiers who wanted to protect. Together, they built a community from the ruins of war. Nira's heart opened slowly to this new world. She made friends. She laughed more. She dreamed again. One day, Ben took her to a small hill just outside the base. From there, they could see the city ruins spread below like a silent ocean. This is our home now, Ben said. We will protect it. We will rebuild. Nira looked at the broken buildings and felt a deep peace. The road ahead was long and hard, but it was full of hope. She took out the metal piece, the last gift from her family. She held it to her chest and smiled. This is not the end, she said softly. It is a new beginning. Ben stood beside her, quiet but strong. Together, they watched the sunset over the broken city, ready to face whatever came next. In a world once shattered by war, a homeless alien woman and a human soldier had found each other. They had shared pain, fear, and hope, and in that sharing, they found something stronger than loss, the promise of a better tomorrow.